Welcome to Reflections. I'm your host, Patrick Tomlinson. Today we have with us Kildare Clarke, MD, JD, MSc, ILR. Dr. Clarke is both a lawyer and a doctor, and he's a scholar. Dr. Clarke started his training at the Herbert H. Lehman College, where he majored in biology and, and minored in psychology. He went on to continue his medical training at the Downstate Medical Center, where he graduated in 1974 with a degree MD. He also went on to Cornell University, where he majored in industrial relations, labor relations, and collective bargaining. His specialties are psychiatry, neurology, emergency medicine, and medical legal forensic medicine. Dr. Clarke holds or has held many different positions in the medical field, too numerous to mention. He, he has published a number of professional papers, including the legalization of drugs and the crisis in drug prohibition. Dr. Clarke is board certified and board eligible in emergency medicine, psychiatry, and neurology. Welcome, Dr. Clarke.
Thanks for inviting me.
Um, Dr. Clarke, as I said in my introduction, you're a scholar. You have covered so much ground with so much experience. Where did the story begin? Tell us, how did it all start? Where were you born, first of all?
It's a very long story, but I'll try to make it as short as possible. I was born in an area known as Fatal Quarter in Hanover, Jamaica,
Okay.
from two parents who could not read and write.
They weren't literate.
Weren't given the opportunity. Let's
Right.
make it that way.
Right. But they were educated.
In their own way, and to me, they were very educated.
Okay. And what was growing up like? How many siblings did you have?
Maybe too many to remember.
Okay. Just at the time.
Put it in the ballpark of 22 of us.
Wow, between mother and father, right?
Between mother and father and other mothers.
Right. But you were telling me about your early schooling. How was that? Share some of that with us.
It's quite an interesting upbringing and schooling. If one doesn't know the Caribbean system, it might be somewhat confusing for them. I went to a primary school, or what they might call elementary school here, but it's much farther along than in this country, known as St. Simon's Public School. There's two tracks. Either you are competent enough or smart enough and your family can afford it for you to go on to the private high school. If not, you have to take the second track, which is to go on through school up to a certain grade. Then you start taking the first year, second year, or third year exam. Or you can do as I do, being a rebel, try to go off on your own and do what is known as the GC, which is the General Certificate of Education, set by London University.
Okay, but before we get to that, I just wanted you to tell us about what school life was like, because you told me you had to walk a long distance. Sometimes you didn't have the right exercise books or textbooks.
People might not understand what it was like growing up without being able to buy even an exercise book sometimes. So you have to beg each student, could I have a sheet of paper from you just to write the notes which you have? And we were living very close to the school before. Then my parents bought another property and we moved to that area. And I was commuting basically about 3 miles back and 3 miles back and forth to school. So it was quite difficult. But, one thing my mother has always said, I cannot read and write, and none of my children should ever eat their name and a piece of bread because they're unable to recognize that's their name. So every one of you must go to school, and there's no excuses.
Okay. So she had a passion for education.
Yes,
Okay. What did your parents do?
they were common laborers.
Hmm.
We had property. They had to either till the property, grow the pigs, the cows, the goats, or they have to work for someone else, such as tying sugar cane on a farm.
Okay, okay. Which was typical at the time in rural communities, rural
That,
Jamaica, even
that's
rural
correct.
communities in the south of the United States.
That's
So,
correct.
what was the name of the school? And do you remember any teachers that had any particular influence on your development?
Yeah, I remember them quite well. There was a teacher known as Miss Christie who was very, very nice, very nice. I like that teacher a lot.
Hmm.
The headmaster name was Mr. Smith,
Okay,
and I remember him more
okay,
than anyone else. Maybe for the wrong reason, but to me it was the right reason.
right.
There was a young man who we were growing up together known as John Spence.
Hmm.
Typical light complexion guy, and he was the teacher's pet.
Right.
He could do nothing wrong.
Hmm.
He We would take exams, and I'm trembling because Mr. Smith is right behind me with a strap, ready
Right.
to flog you if you make mistake on the exam. But John Spence never get any flogging. And I never forget that. I locked it in my head because he always said that you're not going to be anything. And it was always John Spence.
Okay.
And
So you
I decided in my mind, without really knowing it or expressing it to anybody, I'm going to beat this guy in every shape and form in
okay.
school.
So when you left primary school, you're telling me you went on to um, you moved to Kingston, right, the capital of Jamaica.
Yeah, I didn't even finish primary school at the time, but I had asked Mrs. Christie, that's why I love her so much, to
Mm.
sign the form for me to take my GC, and I passed 5 subjects in GC, way, way, way ahead of time.
Okay,
So I can make certain moves which other students couldn't make because they didn't finish school. But I
right.
didn't need to finish school because I was way ahead of it. But through my initiative and telling my parents what I would like to do, and ask Miss Christie to do something which is out of fashion, to just sign the form, so acknowledging that I can take these exams.
Okay. So you moved from the rural area, Hanover,
Yes,
to Kingston.
that's right.
Okay, and what did you do in Kingston? Who did you move with or board with?
In
Talk
Kingston,
to
I had an aunt by the name of Aunt Essie, and went to stay with her for a very short time.
Mhm.
And then in the newspaper, there was a article that they looking for trainee nurses. So I went there just as a fluke because I wasn't of age to do it, but they accepted me. They said, "Bring your birth."
Did you have an inclination to go into the health field?
Yes, from I was 8 years old, I told my mother and father that I'm going to go to medical school, and I'm going to go to law school.
Okay,
Again, did I know what I was talking about? Yes, but not really. Because what was my exposure? My exposure was just to the nurse, the school nurse, which comes around, and the dentist. And whenever the dentist comes around, I am not going to school that day. I go to school, but I'll hide in the bushes because I didn't want the dentist to touch me. I was so deathly afraid of it. So those were my influence without them knowing they were my influence, because I heard them using really big words, as we would say in Jamaica. And I didn't know the meaning of it, but they sound good. And I
Mm.
wanted to be able to do the very same thing, to use those big words. So it reinforces some of my thinking that I want to become a doctor and a lawyer.
Okay. So you stayed with this aunt in the capital, Kingston,
Right.
and you told me you went on to the Bellevue Hospital.
That's right, because she lived on Bryan Street, which is not too far from Bellevue. And as I said, I saw this in the papers. So I said, I'm going to go and try it. And I
Right.
tried it. And luckily for me, they accepted me and I was able to enter the training school immediately. Generally, you have to wait for a year to do that.
Right.
But I enter it, and within 3 years, I was finished and I was out of there, off to the United States.
Okay. Okay. So, did you have any? Was there anybody that you remembered in the training program at Bellevue Hospital? Any um, persons that encouraged you or had a significant impact on you? And
Yeah, there were two doctors, Dr. Norman and Dr. Diorban. Dr. Diorban was from England, and Dr. Norman was from Jamaica, who went to Canada and got his MD degree. And he came back and he was the psychiatrist. Both of them were. Dr. Diorban was both internist and a psychiatrist. Dr. Norman was just a psychiatrist.
okay,
He didn't do internal medicine.
okay.
Again, he didn't specialize in internal medicine. Let me say that.
So,
And,
okay, go ahead.
and with them, that was just watching them coming in, taking care of the patient and doing things. I was very thrilled by watching them to do it. And I said, I'm going to be there one day. And I just kept, I didn't even play games. When I said didn't play games, most kids go to play cricket, things like that. No, I was always in the books.
Right.
That was my thing. The book, the book, the book. I would give away even my dinner to my brothers just so that I can study and they can do my chore around the house.
Okay. Okay. So you graduated from that program,
Right.
and then you were explaining to me that shortly thereafter you came to the United States.
Yeah, not knowing where I was coming per se, more than that I was accepted to a school in Wilmington, Ohio, a university. And I came up and I went to this school. I spent not even a full semester. I didn't like the area. It was way in the boondocks. I didn't understand what it was cold. I came with $100 in my pocket.
Hmm.
And when I got to the airport, the dean of students who was supposed to meet me, my plane was late in Jamaica. So when we got there, he had left already. So I took a cab, not knowing what it would cost. Cab cost me $90.
Well,
So I had $10 left.
well,
But there was a dean of students, and they had some organization for foreign students. So I went to them and we talk, and I tell them I wasn't that happy with there. So I'm going to get a plane. And they got me a plane ticket to New York. And when I came to New York with relatives here, but I didn't know where they were. I went straight to New York Presbyterian Hospital, Cornell, Westchester Division. It's a psychiatric place. And the nurse in charge, known as Miss Early, she was the nursing director. And she just said, okay, you can come here and you can work for us as a nurse's aide. And then I started going to college in the full time and working in the evenings full time at for Miss Early. Then I was there for 4 years, and in my fourth year, when I applied to medical school, I got accepted. There was a nursing supervisor by the name of Mr. Murdoch, and he hated my guts. Don't ask me the reasons why. But one day I said to him, once I found out that I was going to go to medical school, I said to Mr. Murdoch, for some reason, you do not really like me. And I have no problem with that. But I am giving you my white coat here, which I was wearing, and you might want the job for your son, but I will be back. And I said to him, I am not saying I will be back with the standard belief of most people that when blacks said they will be back, that means they're coming back with a gun to get you. That was not my thinking. I let him know that my thinking, I'll be coming back because I'm getting something which a lot of people would like to have, and I'm going to get it. And I gave him my white coat, and I left the job because I was going to start medical school in September. Incidentally, during my whole course before I left there were two other very influential people in my life. There was a teacher known as Dr. Barrows, a black PhD at the Westchester Community College. And I was taking microbiology with her, and she generally said to me, be serious with be serious. Be serious is a bacteria known as Bacillus cereus. It's so deadly that she warned every student, you have to be serious, because if you're not be serious with be serious, you're going to have problems. So I was very mindful of that. Then there was Dr. O'Neill, who was a psychiatrist at the hospital where I was working as an aide, who heard that I wanted to go to medical school and I was taking on my courses, and she bought me a microbiology book, which I still have in my library collection until today.
Oh, fascinating. Fascinating. So you attended the Downstate Medical Center
That's correct.
in Brooklyn. What was the atmosphere like at the time, and the challenges and the setbacks that you experienced?
A lot of setbacks and challenges. It was brutal in some respect. Thinking that you're in a school where there are 800 medical students, 200 per class, you know, up to the fourth year. I got there were 4 black students
Out
with
of a
me,
class of what?
out of 200 in my class.
Okay.
Right,
So that's less than 4%. That's like 2%.
right, that's correct. And luckily for me, there was a friend I had outside who was very friendly with one of the medical students who was in my class. And the medical student get to like me, and you know, they decide there need to be a class president, a president of the student body. And he decided to run my campaign for me to become the president of the student body. And I won.
So you're in politics too.
Surprisingly. So I won, and I won.
Okay.
And it gave me one great opportunity, because during that time, if you failed one subject in medical school, you were bounced out of medical school. But because I was sitting with the movers and shakers at that time who formulate policy about the medical school, I said, it's unfair, because you could fail a course and you should be given the opportunity to retake that course, because everybody operates quite differently. Some are very good at taking exam, some are not that good at taking exam.
That's so true.
And there were 2 one black student who flunked out and didn't want to come back. The other one dropped out, and I begged him to come back, and he eventually came back, and he's a great gastroenterologist now. But I was also very fortunate in medical school because the teachers, they were very good to me in a sense, especially in neuroanatomy. You know, the teachers would always spend extra time with us
Right.
to help us through because we were like busing a black student into a white neighborhood.
Okay.
Even though the medical school is in a predominantly black neighborhood.
Right. How did you get into law now? What prompted you to get into law, Dr. Clarke?
As I said, I've always wanted to do both from when I was 8 years old. And part of my whole idea was to use law, not to go practice law per se, but to use law as a formulation to help me formulate ideas to bring it back into medicine so that we can have a just distribution of medical care across the spectrum.
Okay. Okay. And then you also went on to the Cornell University Labor Relations Institute, right?
Yes, that's correct. Because at the time, I was voted again to be the vice president of the union, which represents all the doctors who works for New York City. And we have some
For
out of...
the Health and the Hospitals Corporation.
That's correct. That's correct. And the health department. Anyone who works for New York City, whether it's for the hospital system or the health department or the prison department, because there was a unit for just prison health. So I went on to Cornell to get my master's in industrial labor relation and management because I was vice president for the union for contract negotiation.
Okay.
So law school prepared me for it to a point, but it was not sufficient. I want to dig deeper into the whole realm of collective bargaining. So that's why I went on to law school.
Okay.
To graduate school to do my master's in industrial labor relations.
Okay. Dr. Clarke, I know that you have an interest in drugs, and that's a whole different subject, and maybe we'll ask you to look at that at another time, to go into that, to drill down into that a little bit more deeply. Okay? So just take a minute to tell us, give us a summary overview of your philosophy or your outlook on this whole drug situation without being, like I said, a minute or so.
Okay. The whole philosophy is I was sick and tired of hearing people talking about the crack babies and the jug this and the jug lords, but yet I was seeing tremendous amount of young black men being killed, coming because of the drug trade, coming to the emergency department, which I was the associate medical director of. And I decided I've got to take this in my own hand and to do something about it, because I was keeping the statistic of the frequency of death, and two people stand out mostly in my mind. It was two brothers. 1 week I pronounced the older one, who was 19 years old, dead from gunshot wound because of drug violence. I begged the brother not to follow his older brother, because the pain which I watched he and his family going through at the death of his brother. Yet 2 weeks later, I'm pronouncing him also dead from gunshot wound because of the drug violence. Then I really got concerned, and I started writing articles. And then I also had to testify before Senator Rockefeller Healthcare Committee on drugs and poor care within the Health and Hospital Corporation. Then I was invited to Stanford University to present a paper with Milton Friedman and Ethan Nadelman, who was the head of the Drug Policy Foundation, and and so on and so forth, that I got involved tremendously and started publishing paper and giving talks over the country about it. And we eventually had a discussion with William Buckley and Senator Congressman Charlie Ranglin, who doesn't speak to me until today because I really ride him all over the place in our discussion about drug policy and why drug policy has failed so miserably and why we must change it.
Okay, Dr. Clarke, we have just a few minutes left. So I'd like you to summarize for me your philosophy as it relates to a person coming from difficult or challenging circumstances and utilizing or using those circumstances to overcome the odds against them, and not using um, or circumstances all the time to be a crutch or a hindrance to us. So just take a couple of minutes to summarize for us and to speak.
My personal philosophy is you play with the cards you have. And because you might be born in a poor situation doesn't mean you have to end up that way. As I've always said, and I will continue to say, one of the biggest mistakes the United States might have made with me is to allow me to get an education, because I become the most dangerous person at that point. And I would like every young person, black, white, it doesn't matter what, is to believe in yourself, know there are opportunities out there, but you have to go and seek them out. Do not be afraid to ask questions, because if you do not ask questions, you will never have the answer by yourself. Believe in yourself, study hard, work hard, and the rewards are enormous. Even if it's not a lot of money you make from the rewards, the personal satisfaction is so great that you are on a perpetual high. Just like I don't drink alcohol, I don't take drugs, but I'm high as a kite every day because I look at where I'm coming from, where I am, and how I have helped hundreds or maybe thousands of people to achieve some of the very same things I have achieved.
Fascinating words, Dr. Clarke. An inspiring interview, and we thank you ever so much for taking the time out to come and speak to us.
You're
Thank you, Dr.
welcome. Thank you.